Good afternoon and welcome to this Disruptors session. I'm Ben Ormsby, and over the next 40 minutes, we're going to attempt to answer the question of who are the disruptors of tomorrow? Well, there's going to be plenty, and we're going to showcase you 5 here and meet them and meet the companies that could be shaping the future of the Midlands and the UK economy as we move forward. So let's get started. I'd like to welcome my first guest, Trent Peek, Group Director of CCM Group.
Hi, Ben.
Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you indeed. Yeah,
Perfect.
can you hear me?
That's all right. I thought I'd better double check that before we went going. So I guess, Trent, could you tell us a little bit about CCM Group and what your disruption is going in the market at the minute?
Yeah, sure. So CCM Group's made up of 5 companies, all under the same umbrella. We use the same staff. So we're still a central unit, but we have 5 companies underneath. One's historically, and it's what CCM started, is a data-driven marketing agency. Then over the last 3 or 4 years, we've created some B2C brands ourselves. So we've got Real Scooters, we've got Trusted PPE, and we've got My Smart Desk. And the last one, to add the cherry on top, is We Are Fulfillment, which is exactly what it says on the tin. It's a 3PL fulfillment company. We were obviously fulfilling for our own 3 B2C brands. So we thought, why not offer this to other companies?
Obviously, you sort of said there, you started out as a marketing, sort of creative marketing agency, and have then branched out into, well, these other things, and actually the direct consumer stuff that you were perhaps working on for other people. Now,
yeah.
How difficult has that been? And what's your ambition for CCM as it looks forward?
Yeah, I think there was always intrigue because we were doing it on behalf of our clients. So there was always that part of, we're doing this for other people, we can't do it to ourselves. What happened with the pandemic is that kind of fast forwarded that. We needed to shift because the world changed and business changed, and we needed to kind of adapt. So we obviously, the rise of the internet, the rise of e-commerce, we went into that field with the expertise we had, along with the expertise of fulfillment on B2B clients. And because we've got such a great team, I think the one thing that stuck throughout that is that people have seen a new challenge and been agile to it and been open to it. And then the last one was we actually looked to outsource the fulfillment for our own 3 companies, and there wasn't quite the right thing out there. There was like snippets of great communication and great fulfillment, but there wasn't the whole package. So it's like, well, why don't we bring this to the table?
And you've touched on those three brands there. You've got the fulfillment side, you've got the real scooters, the real electric scooters, and you've got the Trusted PPE. Obviously, Trusted PPE, I imagine, has had a busy 12 months.
Yeah, I mean, just in that in itself, we could show you a chart of daily sales, and if you put that over cases or government announcement, it's fluctuated so heavily. So the one day when masks became mandatory, I think the orders went up by about 5,000% or something. So, and that at that point, all staff members were in the warehouse. The next day it might not have been bad, and we needed to do some marketing or something. So it was just throughout that time, staff members being very open to getting stuck in.
Perhaps of those 3 sort of brands, and it's probably a bit like picking your favorite child, so I apologize. Which one do you see perhaps the biggest opportunity for in the world as we move forward?
Yeah, I think for me, my personal favorite and the one that I've kind of got the most hope for is Real Scooters, purely because I go to London sometimes, and actually the best way to get around London, and also the cheapest and the best for the environment, is scooters. And when you're on them as well, they are really good fun. There's obviously a lot of work being done by the government about legalizing them within London. And I think they're past the point of no return in terms of making that nationally legalized. And when that happens, I think that the spike of people using them will be huge.
And then I guess, what are the potential blocks to achieving this potential? You've touched on the government restrictions. Yeah. I guess are there other things that you think that you're watching carefully, thinking this could be a challenge to what we want to achieve?
Yeah, I think most of it follows suit to what the government is doing, but because they haven't legalized them, they haven't set out the ground rules about where to use them, where not to use them, how to use them, and all the road safety stuff, because they haven't needed to, because they're just illegal, although lots of people do use them, as we know. So not only do we need that shift to it's fine because they are good for the environment. If we go back to other modes of transport that have come over the last 10, 20 years, even like the share scheme for bikes, when they first came about, nobody kind of made sense of them and they were knocking people over. And it takes time for people to adjust to that. So when they do become legal, there will be a load of laws put in place and a load of guidelines, more importantly, and we might have to adapt to the speed limit of them or where they can be used or the app that goes alongside them. So I think we need to be very quick on that because it's really hard to tell which way the government's going to go.
Well, interestingly, I was going to ask the question, do you see it being a personal mode of transport that perhaps you own and take with you to get on the train? Or do you see it as one, a bit like the bike schemes that you've talked about, that are based in a city centre, you get off a train and you get out your car and you go and use it there? Or do you see it's a hybrid model of the two?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a hybrid model because scooters can be used recreationally because they are really good fun when you're out and about in the open, fresh air. And I think we did some market research a few months ago that they become cost effective buying one outright after around 100 days travel of using a public transport. So obviously it's about £3 a trip for a few kilometers. That's fine if you're doing that 10, 20, 30 times a year. But if you're doing that every day, a month or so down the line after 100 trips, then it is more cost effective to own. And also you've got that element of ownership. You'd want to keep it in a nice way and you can take it wherever you want. You can put it in the boot. But I do think it's a hybrid model for sure.
And so I guess, what's your plan, looking ahead 2, 3, 4 years time down the line, where do you want to be with real electric scooters?
Yeah, so at the moment we're just trying to get our foot in because we can't push them too heavy because if anybody buys them now, they're for recreational off-road use. Of course they are, but we're just getting the brand out there. So the marketing at the moment is just kind of getting the reputation of being a trustworthy brand. And then whenever that shift happens, we're there to kind of push some buttons, increase marketing, and capitalize is the wrong word, but almost be there ready for that change. And then over the next 2-3 years, I think the industry itself is just going to grow and also adapt. So we need to make sure we're adapting the products and the services and the marketing, but also be ready to grow in whichever way that may be.
No, that's fantastic, and I definitely, I look forward to seeing everyone riding around on real electric scooters in the hopefully not too distant future, and seeing how you go from strength to strength on that journey. So, no, thank you very much, Trent. That's been fascinating, and yeah, no, thank you very much. I'd now like to invite Johnathan Jackson, the CEO of Previsico, to join me, please.
Hi Ben, how are you?
I'm very well, sir. Yourself?
Yeah, really good, thanks.
Good. So, Johnathan, can you tell me a little bit about Visco and about what your disruption is within the market?
Sure, yeah. So Previsico is in the world of flood forecasting, which is pretty much in the news all the time at the moment with climate change. And the way what the product is effectively is that we are providing real-time warnings. So every 3 hours we'll produce a new flood forecast, which forecasts up to 48 hours ahead. But we're actually able to forecast down to an individual property level. So be able to help property owners understand the time and potential depth of flood that they may suffer at any particular point in time. So it's a pretty amazing bit of technology which has come out of Loughborough University. It's been a really interesting journey because the technology actually was driven by work with the Environment Agency, Met Office, and Cabinet Office, who all recognised that there was a problem with flood warnings, which is that the Environment Agency does a pretty good job around river and coastal flood, but the biggest problem is surface water flood. So surface water flood is bigger in terms of flood problem than both river and coastal flood combined. Viva reckon there's about 1 in 5 properties at risk of surface water flooding now because of climate change and urbanisation. And so they needed to find a solution to surface water flood. And they approached Professor Yu at Loughborough University. And he's been able to come up with a live flood modelling service, which gives a unique level of insight to a property owner as to how they can protect against flood. And I guess just one of the things I should really stress out is that for people to really get the value out of our service is that you do need to make sure that you have a flood plan. So in other words, if we're telling you you're going to be at risk of flood, you've got to think, well, what am I going to do? And the other thing is have resilience measures for those properties that you have where you can't physically move them. So moving a car is really easy. Moving a house, not so easy. So yeah, it's really part of an overall solution that we know from research done by the EU, the World Bank, and others, that if you have a flood plan, flood warnings, and these resilience measures, you can save the majority of flood losses. And just to give that a number, in 2050, it's forecast that there'll be $1.7 trillion per annum of flood losses. And today, the UK suffers 1.3 billion per annum of flood loss.
Wow. So obviously you've talked about the product, and you've talked about it from a consumer perspective of me living in a place where I could be flooded, you being able to give me the warning and get my flood plan into action. I guess what other opportunities do you see for that within? I guess the insurance sector must be one of those ones that's hotly watching what you're doing, because if they can predict that a flood is going to come to, well, in my case, Doncaster, and hit me, that they're going to be able to charge my premiums more, but also hopefully encourage me to get my flood plan together.
Absolutely, and you know, if you're from Doncaster, you've had a pretty recent experience of flooding as well back in 2019. And you talk about the insurance industry. Well, you're absolutely right. You know, in fact, I think it was the chief exec of Aviva who did the government review of Doncaster and how the insurance industry can better respond. And yeah, we've very much targeted the insurance sector. We see that you know, for them, it's really important that they help people reduce flood loss, because clearly it affects the insurer, because it reduces their payouts against flood, and really importantly, it helps the property owner avoid what is a really horrendous situation. You know, you see people on the TV in homes, etc., who've been really devastated by flood. But one of the most chilling stats to me is that 40% of businesses that are hit with flood never reopen. So you're wiping out somebody's livelihood and business, which is just horrendous. So yeah, it's a really big deal for insurance, and we've been delighted that we're working with the likes of Zurich, who've been trying the service with us, and also with British Telecom. And yeah, we're really now starting to get the insurers to take the service on board.
And I guess then, so what's your ambition looking ahead? You know, 3-4 years down the line, what's your ambition for where Visco is?
Yeah, we've kind of got quite big ambitions, because of the fact that whilst we're looking to build a really successful commercial business, we actually also feel there's a moral imperative around this, in as much that we can help people avoid flood loss. We've got to get this out globally as soon as we can. So right now we are setting out ourselves in the US. So we've got about 2/3 of the US now modelled and ready to go. We've modelled Tokyo last year. We've done work in places like the Philippines. We also started to work with the Red Cross in Kenya. So yeah, we want to get this out globally as soon as possible.
And what are the potential blocks to that? I guess, you know, is it the amount of time it takes to build the model? Are there other significant challenges that you face?
So I guess that the first challenge that we face, particularly in those parts of the world which are less developed, is getting the data. So the way we set up the model is we're pulling in a whole range of data. So we pull in what's called LiDAR data, which is where a plane flies over a geography, and it uses a laser to measure exactly how high the land is. So we've got a really good topographical view of a geographical area. You know, some countries just can't afford to do that sort of work, so they don't have that capability. Similarly, we look to bring in drainage data. Again, you may not have that sort of data available in various countries. So that's a really practical issue that we face with certain locations. I think another thing for us is the is making sure that we've got the sort of the combination in place, because as I say, just to have a flood warning doesn't really help somebody unless they've got a flood plan at the very least. So you need a flood plan for those movable assets, and then similarly making sure that they have resilience measures for the immovable assets as we look at it. So that's the other thing, is again educating people, help people understand that. Even in the UK, it's crazy how many times a flood hits and somebody's left their car outside their house. And something is, as I say, it's just as simple as that. So yeah, those are the areas that we see as where we really need to help, hopefully, remove barriers.
And I guess you touched briefly on that partnership with Zurich and others. I guess, how much are they going to, do you see them playing a part in helping you with that global mission? Yeah,
it's absolutely part of the reason why we chose the insurance industry was because they are global in nature. So Zurich is obviously an EU-based insurer. The UK is their second largest market. Their biggest market is the US. Our first client in the UK is actually the third largest US insurer. So absolutely, and these guys are around the world. So the whole idea is, they work with us in the UK, build their confidence, and then they can take us to their various locations, wherever they may be.
No, it's a fantastic story and a really interesting business that, as you say, is imperative we get right as we face the current climate challenges that we face, and we see ever increasing levels of flooding. So now, Johnathan, thank you very much for joining me, and I wish you every success in your world conquering ambitions. So,
many thanks indeed, Ben. It's been a pleasure. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye. Next, I would like to invite Mandy, Colledge, Director of Talent Toute, to join me, if that's possible, please. And as if by magic, there she is. There's Mandy. Hi, Mandy. You're just on mute, so I'll give you there we go. Hi, Mandy. I guess if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, Talent Toute, and telling us a little bit about your disruption.
Yeah, sure. So Talent Toute, we're a new business, and we're basically here to break down the barriers in recruitment and selection. So we're changing the way things are done. We're turning things on their head and really using digital as an enabler to do that. In particular, we're mitigating unconscious bias in the early stages of selection. So we know that recruitment is steeped really in traditional methods of selection, and we really want to make it a digital marketplace. Like we've seen in other industry sectors, we want to bring that to recruitment as well. So there's lots of choices out there for recruiters to hire, lots of different methods, but we're really focusing on the digital element of this, not removing the personal aspect, but really focusing on the digital piece there. So we've created a network of IT professionals, particular emphasis on mid to senior hires, and we use a unique notification process to reach them, to make sure that the information they hold on their data, on our system, is as close to real-time data as possible. And then we also have an instant chat facility to communicate directly with the candidates. So candidates create a profile. We're really making sure that instead of advertising a role and waiting for applicants to come direct to it, which could be anything from 56 to 500 applicants per vacancy. It's very long-winded, labour-intensive. We're turning things on the head so that employers go direct to candidates. Candidates create a unique profile, which is really focusing on simplicity and the core information required for them to do the job. So we know that if ever you apply for a role, you have to adjust your CV, which takes a long time, or complete a long-winded application form, which often you're completing information that doesn't really seem relevant to the role that you're applying for and takes a really long time. So the information that we hold on candidates is very simplistic and really focusing on the core things that enable a recruiter to make a decision in terms of their capability and their core qualifications and things that really are at the essence of what's required to do the job. And this is where we mitigate unconscious bias, because often information that's put forward from candidates contains information that we can make inferences from, about where they studied, how old they are, etc. So this is really about just the essence of information required to make a sound decision as a recruiter. And we're just really focused on creating a level playing field for all candidates utilising digital technology.
Obviously, you touched on the fact that it's focused on the IT industry at present. Do you have an ambition to expand that into other sectors? Or do you see potential to take that?
Yeah, absolutely. We're focusing on IT initially because the speed and simplicity of what we're doing really lends itself to a more agile workforce. So IT, obviously, we have lots of contractors, fixed-term employees, etc. So that seemed like the most logical route to go down initially. So that's what we're doing to start with, but definitely we see this expanding beyond IT to engineering, healthcare, etc. Yeah.
And how is it, how has the journey been going? How have both applicants been finding it as a platform and those people looking to recruit, the businesses who are recruiting at the end? Have you had, what feedback have you been getting from them? Do they find it works better than a job ad on LinkedIn or in a target publication, for instance?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's obviously different indicators that companies use to measure the effectiveness of recruitment. One of them is time to hire. So rather than waiting for all these applicants, as I say, sifting through them, responding, that can take up to 12 days on average of the hiring process. So we're potentially cutting that short significantly. So that's been a real advantage. From a candidate perspective, we started off with it based on an app, and we've soon realised that actually making it web enabled as well is a lot easier. So we're working to change that to make it much quicker for candidates. So yeah, it's been really good in that respect, and the agility and the speed of the communication, I think, is what's really made the difference on both sides so far.
And I guess what are the potential challenges you see to growing Talent Toute as we move forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, as we mentioned, recruitment is steeped in tradition, and whilst in-house recruitment teams have got lots of things that they need to satisfy, so they've got an abundance of roles, lots of internal stakeholders, there is a reliance on existing methods that they've used for a long time. So this is really about really trying to change the way people think and making sure that we're working with people who are innovators, who are looking to change. We know inclusivity and diversity is hot on many companies' agendas right now, and they're building policies, they're putting lots of measures in place to make environments much more inclusive and fair for all. I think this is about really instilling that mindset in different companies to say, actually, the practical steps that you take can speak a lot louder than actually the words that we're perhaps communicating across businesses. It's really looking at what can we actually do, especially at this early stage of selection, taking physical measures to make changes, make a big difference. So for us, it's really about instilling, kind of educating, helping people to change this mindset and open the doors to different ways of doing things, because I think there is an appetite to change and there is a great intention, but it's about, there are other things out there that can really enhance this recruitment process for candidates and employers. Let's just open our mind and just, consider other options at the moment.
But it certainly sounds like a fascinating concept. And as you say, the industry feels like it's one that's steeped in tradition and therefore ripe to be innovated and disrupted. So I wish you and everyone at Talent Toute all the best, and look forward to seeing you transform the recruitment industry as it moves forward. So thank you very much, Mandy.
Thank you. Yeah, that's the intention. Just to say as well, we've been lucky enough to work with Million Labs in the West Midlands, and they're helping us build this in a no-code solution, which again is innovation. So big shout out to them, and thanks for the work that they're doing with us at the moment.
Brilliant. No, fantastic. And thank you very much for your time, Mandy. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ben.
Thanks a lot. Next, I would like to ask Hilary-Smyth-Allen, the executive lead at Supertech, to join me. Hi, Hilary. How are you?
All right, thank you. Yes.
Very good. Very good. So I guess the same question goes to you as gone to everyone else. Tell us a little bit about Supertech and how you see yourself disrupting the status quo. So yeah.
Thank you. Great to be here. So Hilary, Supertech. Supertech is a little different to our other speakers today because we're a cluster organisation. So we're not a trading service provider in that sense of being a business. We're not for profit for a start. So we are a place-based proposition that brings together a community of people who are also disruptors in their own right, but bringing that around the West Midlands, looking at fintech, insurtech, HR tech, etc. And then we put in programs and projects that work at a collective level to try and build that proposition out of the West Midlands and build that community in a kind of levelling up way.
So I guess you're in a prime position then to talk about actually how disruptive the Midlands community is.
Yeah, so I was going to talk a little bit about what Mandy just talked about at the end, if I may. Because Mandy's part of one of the programs. So she referenced there Million Labs. Million Labs is a partner of Supertech, and together that's a program called Supertech Seeds. So the Seeds program is a great example of how we're trying to work at that collective level. So no code being the future of lots of developments, and it enables very early stage founders, many of the founders that we've spoken to, and Talent Toute being an example of that, where the barriers to entry are quite high. You need a lot of access to money to build that first minimum viable product, to get your business launched, to test the market, etc. And the consequence of that for a region like the West Midlands is that the average age of a fintech founder is 48, but it's also white, it's male, it's middle class. And you look at the demographics and you stand back from that and say, well, actually, there's no proven correlation between the quality of a business idea and demographics. So then that's fundamentally not okay. So we've been exploring with a pilot program, which Talent is part of it, and 4 of our other founders. We've got 2 HR techs, 1 fintech, 1 legal tech, 2 fintechs, I apologise, from all different backgrounds. It's female dominant, which is great, more BAME representation coming through that and through the applications, and it was a pilot. We've been successful now in winning quite a bit more money to take this program forwards. So we've got some government funding, and we will be launching that in the new year and looking to get another 20 founders through that, getting them live. Because the evidence is really strong that if you can get live and prove your model, then the seed money follows. It's just that initial hump. So fail fast, learn quick methodology. That's what we're trying to do here.
And you've touched on it there that through the programs already, you've seen better inclusivity is probably the best way to put it, and more representation of the communities in which we live. How important is that in actually driving forward that innovation? Because you sort of said there, fintechs, that they may be 48-year-old white men who therefore may have a very similar experience and life experience. And that I am being a bit harsh there, but it's how important is that to innovation? It's
a well-researched and evidence fact that diversity of thought is good for business. So I don't think any of us are breaking new ground in saying that. But it's also about fairness and the access to quality of jobs. So if you take fintech, we stick on that one, for example. If you're successful within that space, then it's well paid, it's high quality jobs, it's high quality of life. So why wouldn't we be chasing that for all of our citizens and trying to lower the barriers to entry? And because it's good for UK PLC. The West Midlands is a beating heart of that, and it's part of this global Britain agenda. So we need to have, more entrepreneurial spirit, taking that forward and bringing that through. But also it's really resonant for some of the big challenges which are facing some of those industries. So what's the future of credit? The likes of Cooner and those sort of disruptors that we've seen go before us. Well, young people have a very different relationship to credit than we've got now. And that's really important for our society, seeing all these different options that are coming forward. Put that in a legal context, then, well, there are just different ways of doing it. They don't necessarily need a lawyer to do it, because if you can stop a problem manifesting, you stop it becoming a legal problem, perhaps. So people are meeting different solutions in different ways. So that's what we're keen to explore and see, is the richness of ideas and help that early, really well-known hump at the front end.
And I guess, the ambition then is to make sure that the Midlands is recognised, and rightly so recognised, as a hub for that innovation within those 3 sectors you talked about. And I imagine that there will be potentially others that you will be looking at moving forward. So what are the blocks, do you think, to achieving that ambition?
So some of it is around, just if you look at the startup experience, then you need more access to capital and stuff. But what we found is that you can't attract the capital unless you've got the density of founders with attractive ideas. So we're working on that density side first and finding that actually some investors will try and find you. It's amazing how many of our inquiries have gone up from having that base and really compelling stories to tell. And we'll see more of those as founders come through our program and go live, and we can tell their stories and launch their businesses. So it'll be partly through that. More practically, it's really hard to find people with an idea, that an itch that they're not scratching. I mean, what even is the social programmatic, factors that you would put to land an advert to catch that person at the right point in time? So answers on a postcard, really practically. Great to hear from anybody doing that. And then long term, we really want to prove that this model works and shift it from being a public funding project to being one where actually that we can replace that money with private sector money and put some sustainability into it, and really just change the way that founder experience happens here.
And you've touched on, we've touched on Talent Toute earlier on. Are there any other companies that are coming through that you think are doing something that are really, really exciting and that you think should be on people's radars? Looking ahead
so I'll do a shout out for Ali Kazmi, who's from Ethical Equity. He's got a Sharia compliant lending platform. So again, tapping into that enormous underserved, underrepresented volume of people with good businesses and wanting to invest, but wanting for their own reasons to do that through an ethical framework. So give him a big shout out. Shout out to Julia and Duckett. She's trying to build a fintech which better services individuals with multiple credit cards and stuff. So literally that problem of like, which one do I pay off first? And what's the main interest? Sometimes, and that's an underserved part because they're not necessarily in debt and in an IVA bankruptcy gone away. They just want to know how to get the best value and the best route out of that scenario. So that's just to name two. Nick is trying to solve logistics recruitment because he's in logistics and he cares deeply and he wants a better flow of talent coming through it.
A very timely one as we're approaching Christmas. And
yes, very timely. And then
the challenges there.
Niall and Jill are in a kind of post-Grenfell disaster world, helping leaseholders take control of their management fees within shared properties, because that's quite a pain at the moment for people stuck in that boat.
It's a fascinating sort of spectrum of
isn't it? No, it doesn't even begin to tell you about the long list. They're the ones that got through this time.
So and I guess just as a final question, out of interest, how long was that long list originally? Were you inundated, or was it a challenge, and therefore?
No, I'm not going to lie. There is the wild and the wacky came through. Quite a few veg boxes. Can't build veg boxes on a no-code digital platform. Yeah. So you definitely get a sense of the environment and a COVID world that we were living in at the point at which we were launching it. So we had about 50 expressions of interest, which came through that, but we only had 6 places at the end, and that's just a funding constraint. So it's great news to be able to be, we're doing 3-4 times that amount next year in the first 6 months. So any founders out there who this resonates, get in touch, particularly from the West Midlands, because that's a bit of a funding constraint, but not complete barrier.
It sounds exciting, and I'll definitely hope to talk to you again in 6 and 12 months' time to hear about the next wave.
Well, hopefully be the other founders and the likes of Mandy telling you what a difference it's all made to them.
Well, that's it. It certainly seems like there's a plethora of talent, and actually it's fantastic to have an organisation like Supertech helping those founders navigate what is, as you said, quite a challenging part of the journey. So, no, thank you very much, Hilary, and I look forward to speaking to you again in the future.
Thanks for the time. Cheers, Ben.
Thanks a lot. Cheers. My final guest is Baz Kooner, founder of Jatt Life. So hopefully he is joining me now. Hi, Baz.
Hi, Ben. How you doing?
Not too bad, mate. Not too bad. Yourself?
Yeah, not bad. Thank you. Good.
Cracking. So again, same question as everyone else has had. Tell me a little bit about Jatt Life and what it is that what your disruption is and how you're disrupting the market.
Yeah, so Jatt Life is a ultra premium spirits brand. We launched literally a week before the pandemic, which was a bit of a nightmare. But we've absolutely flown since. We're now available in 4 different countries. We've sold north of 200,000 bottles now in the last 18 months worth of trade. And we're actually evolving now into a distillery and a bottling plant. We've just taken over 15,000 square foot warehouse. And just growing at an exponential rate. Taking the drinks market by storm.
That's fascinating because the drinks market, and particularly the premium drinks market, can sometimes seem like it's an old boys club. It's the same old brands. So actually, to be a disruptor coming into that must be quite exciting. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, there's 2 ends of the spectrum. Obviously, with the drinks market, there's either the premium old, your Grey Gooses, your Belvederes that have been there for years, Ciroc, or you've got your very kind of niche. Certain gins and vodkas, handcrafted, hand distilled, with the massive story behind it. We've aimed ourselves at the Ciroc Grey Goose market, so we're a premium product, a premium price point, and that's exactly what we're kind of attacking. We're doing things different to what they're doing and what they're offering. I think because they've been at the top of the game for so many years, they're not as dynamic, as fluid as we are and we can be. We're working with many influencers, celebrities to endorse the brand, and we're offering so much more to the actual people that are that are drinking our products and using our product.
You touched on the start of that journey of launching just before COVID hitting, and then the fact that now 18 months down the line you're in multiple countries, you're selling hundreds of thousands of bottles. What is the ultimate ambition, I guess? Where would you like to be seeing Jatt Life in 2, 3, 4, 5 years time?
Yeah, so we've already publicly put that out there. So when I created this business alongside my wife, it was a case of this was always going to be a 5-year business, with an exit strategy. Since then we've grown exponentially. Our ambition basically is to become a unicorn business, especially within the Midlands. So we're aiming to become $1 billion business within the next 3 years. We've already kind of put the infrastructure in place to achieve that. Failing that, if we're not bought out of the market, plan B is to list on the stock exchange. So we're looking to either list on AIMS or SPACs, probably within the next 3.5 years. So we're already, we're well into our journey. We've just appointed one of the ex-directors of Pernod Ricard, the commercial director. He's now joined us as a non-exec and is also part of the brand, which speaks volumes for our credibility and what we're achieving. We're creating a great infrastructure, and we're just ready to kind of take the market on, really.
And obviously, what potential challenges do you see to achieving those ambitions? That it feels like you're already getting, as you said, everything in place for that. But what are the challenges?
I suppose the biggest challenge for us is the sheer expense of the game. It's a very expensive market to be in. And as anybody knows, if they're building a brand, it's very expensive to build that brand. So there's not just the cost of expansion, but there's also the amount of marketing, especially breaking into that market, using a lot of celebrities and influencers is very expensive. And that is kind of really the only kind of barrier that we see. If we're working with a couple of VCs and stuff that will hopefully help us and aid us in that. Everything we've done to date has been self-funded and by ourselves. But I think, it's definitely a business that's going to need a decent amount of investment to get where it needs to get to. But, we're talking to the right people, and fingers crossed we can get that done.
And obviously you're in, it was 4 countries, wasn't it, you're in already? How are the plans going for further international expansion, and how is that?
We've got another 7 countries opening in the next, probably first quarter next year. So just to give you an example, we're in like Canada, Australia, New Zealand. We're set to go into Dubai, Nigeria, Colombia. These are all contracts that are kind of signed and sealed, but it's just waiting on us now to get our bottling plants and our distillery done here. It's very important to us to make sure that we get the infrastructure right and make sure that we're not going to fail at what we do before we kind of really push forward. So it's just it's very exciting. International business is going to be fun. Fingers crossed. Obviously, we can fly around again soon, which is what I need to do, and we get it over the line.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like a fascinating journey, and also that one that you are very much you've got your goals in sight. I for one certainly look forward to seeing James Bond perhaps sipping a Jatt Life martini at some point in the future, or anywhere else. But no, thank you very much, Baz, and I look forward to following your journey and seeing where the next 3-4 years take you.
Definitely, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Thanks, Baz. Cheers.
Take care. Bye-bye.
So that sadly is all we've got time for this session. Hopefully that's given you a glimpse of some of the exciting businesses that are coming out of the Midlands right now. It's certainly a place where innovation is happening and people with ideas can flourish. Obviously, there will be the place to find out about all these businesses and to follow their stories is on thebusinessdesk.com. And I hope that you'll stick around for the rest of the Disruptors Conference to find out about all the other exciting developments taking place across the region. Thank you very much.